I am the 16th generation of my family in this parish. In the church there is a memorial to my 5th great-grandmother's sister, Anne Simmons, who died in 1805 at the age of 93. We've had vicars in the family over the centuries. We've had a vicar in the 17th century. He became vicar of Begelly. My grandmother's great-uncle, the Reverend Samuel Reed, he was vicar up in Montgomeryshire. His son, the Reverend Canon John Bennett Reed, he became a vicar. He was up in Scotland and out in New Zealand. And on the other side of the family, Bishop Saunders Davies also originates from the village. So yes, we've got a long list of church connections in this parish. My grandmother fought long and hard against disestablishment, refused to accept it until her dying day in 1997 at the age of 99. Her grandfather had gone to the Hyde Park demonstration in 1912, and my great-grandmother and my grandmother saw him off from Letterston Station, and the station master was strutting up and down the platform, a staunch Baptist, and he said to my great-grandmother, "Ich chi'n mynd I gladdu'r hen eglwys, you're going to bury the old church." And my great-grandmother replied, "They're going to gladdu di cyn gladdu'r eglwys, they'll have buried you before they buried the church." As a boy, I was an altar boy, and I used to read the lessons. Then when I went off to university, came back and had a job in the area, became fully a member of the church, and that I did a lot of things. I used to help out with the playing of the organ, read the lessons, run the Sunday school. I became the secretary. My aunt was church warden, but I had to fill in all the forms for her and do all that sort of work. So really, I've served a very, very long curacy, because I got to know how to do all these things before actually being ordained. Because I'd been very active in the church as a child and as a teenager, it was always assumed locally that I would become a vicar. And I think that expectancy put too much pressure on me. And I said, oh no, I don't think so. People were making up my mind for me. And whereas I never lost contact with the church or lost touch with it, I stepped back and said, no, it's not for me. Possibly if I'd had less pressure, I might have gone on straight away.
You think deep down you knew there perhaps was a call there, but it wasn't the right time for it?
I think deep down, yes, there was a calling. There was, and I always used to feel, well, no matter how much I did in this church, I never quite felt fully fulfilled with what I did. And I'm glad by now that circumstances have changed and I have accepted.
And it was around about the year 2013?
2013.
When things changed. So
yes.
Tell us what changed.
Our vicar was leaving, and I went to the launch of an Art on the Faith trail down at the cathedral, because our church was being featured, and I met Bishop Wynne, and I said, well, I hope this doesn't go on for a long time, because we've got the Archdeacon coming tonight to see the churches. And I suppose we will be in perpetual interregnum. To which he replied, well, I've told you the answer. You should be ordained. You've run that parish for 20 years and you know it. At which he walked away. He wasn't rude, but he was definitely the bishop at that point, and I was just left like a fish, not knowing what to say, really. That evening, the Archdeacon came and talked to the representatives of the churches. We went over to see the art exhibitions in the church, and we walked up the path, and I knew I was letting myself in for it, but I couldn't stop myself saying, well, in fact, I was offered to be ordained over 20 years ago, and from that point then, things took off.
What was different by this time from before?
Well, the Saturday before the visit to the cathedral, I'd been down to the ordination service, and I felt that somebody or something was telling me, imagine if you were in that position. And I was saying to myself, no, don't be silly, don't be silly. And then came the meeting with the bishop and the archdeacon, and then a letter came from Archdeacon Dennis wishing me to consider it, and I was still thinking, no. I was going to send a letter back and say, no, that's very kind of you, but no thank you. But he outflanked me, and he said to me, can I come and speak to you in the house? And I was far too polite to say no to an archdeacon. So he came on a Tuesday. It was the first day of the Pembrokeshire County show. And he said, well, we think you should seriously consider being ordained. And he said, you must have time to think about it and to pray about it, which is what happened. But I thought, well, it's not only my decision, it's the decision also of the parish. So I asked the key officers, like the wardens and so on, and some of the members, and everyone said, yes, go for it. They were very, very supportive. So I pondered and prayed very, very hard. My heart was saying yes, but my head was saying, well, are you sure about this now? It's a huge step to take. I was just starting retirement and so on, and life could have been very easy from that point on. I had to ring the Archdeacon because there was a wedding coming up in the church, and he said, well, have you come to a decision? I said, well, I don't know what to tell you. And he said, well, why don't you put your name forward? And if you don't like it, well, there we are, you've given it a go, and both sides will feel, well, yes, we've tried. And I said, okay then, I will. And from that point onwards, a huge burden seemed to lift from my shoulders, and I've never regretted the decision since.
Now, you started on the training that led to ordination as deacon and then priest. How was that? Did you enjoy that?
Yes. I used to love going up to Lancaster. We used to have a great deal of fun, but we learned a tremendous amount as well. And I must say, Rhiannon's part was huge as well. She was very, very encouraging and very helpful.
Then came ordination. First.
Then came ordination, the deaconing, and I must say I went through a whole range of emotions, from excitement on the one hand to nervousness and fear, and sometimes you thought, well, why am I putting myself through all this, but went to the cathedral and you were just carried along, and it was great. And then of course this year you had the priesting, and that was a slightly more relaxed affair in one sense, because you knew what to expect. But it was a very, very special service. And when you went for the ordination and all the other clergy put their hands on top of you, even though you could see from the other people being ordained, it was soon over. It felt at the time that A, it went on for a long time, and B, it was a very safe, secure feeling, because you were surrounded by their faith in you, and it was a lovely feeling to have. There's been lots of joyful occasions, receiving baptisms, very, very joyful, helping people to prepare for weddings. All these are very joyful occasions, and it is, as I say, a privilege to be able to perform them.
And really, the more so because you live in such a close-knit community where you know everyone.
Yes, we know everyone, we're related to many, as is the old Welsh custom. And it's very humbling that they turn to you then as their vicar. And sometimes they say to you, I'm speaking to you now as the vicar, which means it's a completely different type of conversation. And they do take you into their confidence, and of course I respect that. And you see people from another angle, and it is my privilege to serve them now.
Any regrets?
Yes. I should have taken up the offer 25 years ago, really. I should have taken up the offer. Whether I'd have been able to cope and full-time work, I don't know. You could say I served a long curacy and learnt a lot of the mechanics then, which has always been useful. But I think I would have been more fulfilled if I had been ordained 25 years ago. And I would say to anyone who feel that the Spirit is prompting them to say, as Archdeacon Dennis said to me, we'll give it a go. Perhaps you'll find it's not for you. Perhaps you will be needed in another aspect of the church's work. But sometimes you find, yes, it's just for you. And I'm glad I took that decision.